I think Brazil's like a really fascinating market in that oftentimes it's under-indexed in a lot of people's minds. So despite it being, second or even the largest economy in Latin America after Mexico,
I think it's also understated how important the financial rails established in Brazil, like BRICS, make it so that there are more incentives for founders to start companies there first.
Bitso released their new app, and that they have now allowed Mexican people to invest also in crypto and also stocks, and crypto companies wanting to adopt TradFi rails and TradFi companies adopting. How are you seeing this evolve? Hello guys, welcome to another episode of Frontera. I'm Joker, analyst at Espacio Crypto and Frontera, and I'm joined by my good friend Simon, head of growth at Alliance, and Kush, founder of Odyssea Labs. How are you guys today? Where are you?
I'm doing well. I'm in Guatemala at the moment.
Likewise, doing well. Portugal. Let's get this started.
Yeah, I'd like to start off with the Chainalysis report. They released again a preview of the 2025 Geography Cryptocurrency Report, and this one was focused specifically on Latin America and their expanding crypto footprint. And I'd like to start off with this chart, which is the total monthly value received by LatAm, which, as we can see, is in a clear uptrend. They recorded nearly $1.5 trillion in cryptocurrency transaction volume from July 2022 to June 2025. And more specifically, here is the total value received by LatAm countries. And we can see that Brazil clearly blows everyone else out of the water with over $300 billion in cryptocurrency values received. And Kush, I'd like to hear your opinion on this. Why is it that Brazil is clearly superior to all?
Yeah, so I think Brazil's like a really fascinating market in that oftentimes it's under-indexed in a lot of people's minds. So despite it being, second or even the largest economy in Latin America after Mexico, the way that information is transmitted in the country is actually really fascinating. So creators are really important, and like everybody, is it reminded me a lot of when I went to Korea. And everyone's really plugged into what's happening on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram. And so it's really easy to have trends really kick off. Not only that, not only are sort of mimetic power incredibly useful and spreads very quickly in Brazil, there's also this like Degen culture that's been, I think, instantiated by the really robust regulations in the country, right? So I think that's where why Brazil sort of comes above and beyond a lot of the rest of Latin America, because there's a lot of hype around Argentina, but I do think that Brazil is probably and it's like Nubank, right? Like David Vélez, the founder, being Colombian, moved to Brazil to start his bank, right? So I think that really, really kind of wise players, EtherFi launched their crypto card in Brazil. They didn't really try to do any other market. I think that's probably the market that everybody should be looking at. I'm curious, Simon, what you've seen with Brazilian founders, have you had many come through the Alliance programs, any sort of interesting insights from your side, from the Alliance side of the house, as far as founders go from the region?
Yeah, and just to double down, I think it's also understated how important the financial rails established in Brazil, like BRICS, make it so that there are more incentives for founders to start companies there first. Not only is the largest economy in Latin America, but if you're an American founder and you want to, go to Latin America and build a startup in crypto, you probably want to start with either Mexico or Brazil, just for that matter. And even with the Latin American founders that are Brazilian, in Alliance, we've actually seen a lot of them building rails, such as something like on and off ramps, or what Bridge has done, but specialized in Brazil. And what we're seeing now is that the inflows of stablecoins and crypto into Latin America, and specifically, as we can see, the power law in Brazil, are not only due to remittances and are not only to have an inflation hedge or a depreciation of currency hedge by accessing stablecoins, but now businesses, and by the way, Latin Americans exports, Brazilians exports are about 20% of the economy. So businesses are now dealing with multiple international partners, and they would rather get paid in stablecoins. So the business, the institutional adoption, and the businesses now starting to use stablecoins as well in their treasuries are most likely what I would say are the the creation is what is generating this inflow of stable coins into Latin America and specifically into Brazil. But yeah, I was definitely surprised that Mexico is so far behind Brazil. So there definitely has to be something else going on. And as Kush mentioned, they have a behavior, at least from what I understand, they are the Latin American population that gambles the most. So I would not be surprised. They're literally like, trading on hyperliquid with a bunch of leverage and doing all sorts of things.
I think the other like kind of geopolitical component that's really interesting there too is BRICS. And as you mentioned, Simon, a lot of the cross-border payments that happen are actually B2B. And I've spoken with quite a few local Brazilian stablecoin issuers. There was a company actually that just raised $7 million from quite a few big name investors. And the angle here is always, we essentially want to capture the value flows that happen between the BRICS economies functionally, right? And Brazil and China have a very strong relationship. And I think people are really trying to sort of capture that when it comes to thinking about these cross-border payments. So I think it's, I don't know, super flourishing market. At the same time, I wonder if like the effectiveness or utility sometimes of stable coins internally when there's already this very robust PIX system, to be honest. Like that, I sometimes do wonder if you already have PIX, why do you need crypto stablecoin rails? Because it actually works super well.
Well, Kush, I think part of what you just said can be seen in this graph, also in the Chainalysis report. There is the period-over-period growth of transfer size in Brazil, and we've seen that institutional and large institutional transfers are what's grown the most in Brazil, and it's this transfer of money, and it's this stablecoin adoption in the country, because related to Brazilians being more Degen and being risk-averse and wanting to try and wanting to try this new technology.
Yeah, no, exactly. But if you notice, it's like retail's not really very present here, right? So I think it's mainly going to be these like large institutions that are trying to send money to and from the BRICS economies, essentially.
Yeah, and on to the next news, we can see that Bitso released their new app and with a brand new design and branding, and that they have now allowed Mexican people to invest also in crypto and also stocks, and they are releasing through a waitlist, allowing people to invest in over 5,000 stocks and ETFs. And I think this is just, Simon, as you told me here in the pre-recording, and this is part of a global trend of tokenized stocks and crypto companies wanting to adopt TradFi rails and TradFi companies adopting these crypto rails. How are you seeing this evolve right now?
For me, as we were talking about offline, the biggest insight here is that this is actually nothing new. I definitely applaud Bitso for integrating tokenized stocks or stocks in general. The way that they're doing it is through tokenized stocks because it's easier to do it in emerging markets. But there are a bunch of companies offering this infrastructure now and basically becoming an API for anybody to offer this. This has been in the works for a long, long time, but we now actually finally have the infrastructure for that to happen, and also the regulation support in the United States for companies to do it in the United States, tokenize them, and then offer it to the world. And what we're going to see is basically more neobanks, fintechs, crypto banks offering tokenized stocks on top of Bitcoin and crypto and all of this. And I think it's cool. I think it's very needed. It just helps people diversify their portfolios. I think the biggest insight for me here, as I was mentioning offline, is that this will just centralize a lot more of power in the New York Stock Exchange, because most people, most retail and institutional will want to invest in American stocks rather than in local stocks. And so I think we're most likely going to have, 50 years from now, like one global stock exchange. We're just going to continue to see a trend where companies in Latin America or in any emerging market will want to become public in the United States Stock Exchange rather than in local exchanges. And I recently learned that a few local exchanges, stock exchanges in Latin America, are merging together because of this exact reason, and they're going to continue to lose power. So that's an interesting insight that I can bring into the conversation. But maybe Kush, I don't know what you're seeing in that area.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of folks do, we started with X stocks. We've seen it with a number of other folks trying to tokenize either pre-stocks or even stock trading. I think the advantage that these larger actors like a Bitso or Ripio, they eventually end up tokenizing stocks is essentially have like distribution power effectively, right? And certainly, the stock exchanges in these local markets, apart from B3, really, the Brazilian stock exchange, where we've seen, the likes of DATS play out and so forth, don't really have the size needed for large players to get involved. So I think we'll just see, as you said, I think, essentially a consolidation of the stock exchanges, everyone trying to drive to the most liquid markets, which, is going to be US-based markets. Ultimately, we see Chinese markets try to make a big push as well in the region. I think we're generally under indexing on a lot of Chinese based stocks too. But I do think that we'll soon enough begin to see more folks in the region try to integrate these tokenized stocks play, which is interesting, right? Because it's nothing new. But this is always what happens in Latin America. This is why working in this region is so funny, because you see something happen in the US, tokenized stocks, right, on Robinhood were launched 12 months ago. And then 12 months later, it gets adopted in the region. So you sort of have a peer into the sort of frontier of where the region is going through just...
I wonder if now, obviously, I don't think other economies will have so much weight that they're going to affect the prices of stocks of different companies in the United States in the immediate term. But longer term, in a probably very linear way, we're going to see valuations increase a lot more, not only because of quantitative easing and money, new broad money being in the streets because of the Federal Reserve, but also now because of tokenized stocks being available to every single person and business in the world. And so, I wouldn't be surprised if NVIDIA, valuation in the next 5 years is 10 trillion, right? Not only, again, driven by quantitative easing, but also by this kind of broad access to it. And also if as well, because of the, I guess, lack of expertise of all these retail investors coming into the market, how that will affect even companies who shouldn't have valuations, that they will just gain them, or just where the value will flow to with this global stock exchange.
I honestly think retail is probably going to get absolutely fleeced on the Bitso exchange, most likely, right? Or any exchange that is tokenizing stocks, because there's already a displacement that happens with tokenized stocks where there isn't this direct one-to-one sort of price matching. There's a lot of sort of issues around oracles. We've seen it play out with a lot of the sort of tokenized stocks, but I think you add the sort of international layer onto that, and it really is inevitable that retail is going to get absolutely, and we are, it's Citadel, right, is infamous for their payment for order flow, fleecing of retail. A Mexican retail investor is likely to be a lot less sophisticated than someone based in the US, just by way of geographic separation too. So I think it's good to give people this access, but I do think that given the reliance on the traditional rails and the disjuncture that happens there with tokenized stocks, I don't think that they'll ultimately get the best execution possible, unfortunately.
Yeah, and just last comment there. I have to double check the information, but I do know that the New York Stock Exchange is going on-chain, by the way, directly. So that reduces a lot of the kind of intermediary risks on tokenized stocks, which is an important risk, of course. So now, it's most likely that just through APIs, somebody in, Bhutan, I'm talking about Bhutan, will be able to get, Apple stock, the same Apple stock that, 15 years ago, only Wall Street could get.
Yep. And I think we'll see all exchanges ultimately sort of come on chain, right? So, and indicative as well with a recent sort of $2 billion investment into Polymarket and so forth. So should be exciting. But I know we've got Bhutan news. Speaking of Bhutan, take it away.
Kush, talking about Bhutan, I know this is your favorite news of the week, that they just they're migrating their national ID system to Ethereum. They had it on Polygon and now are migrating to Ethereum. And when I saw this news, I knew you would be excited, because I think this goes in hand with your research and with the Ethereum Foundation to talk about how Ethereum can mitigate AI risks. And I related it to this, and I would like to hear your opinion on this, on Bhutan becoming the first nation to anchor its national identity system to Ethereum.
Yes. So I actually wrote my graduate thesis on Bhutan, funnily enough. And so it's been really cool to see, sort of worlds converging. Effectively, what Bhutan is doing is they're bringing their entire sort of national ID, as you pointed out, Joker, onto Ethereum. We've seen, Brazil and Vietnam start to explore a little bit of what this could look like. They have their Bhutan NDI system, effectively. And so Vitalik and Aya, both from the EF, went over to Bhutan, and the whole premise, it's going to be a sort of private SSI system for verifiable credentials on chain. So Estonia has their X roads, also blockchain powered kind of ID and bureaucracy sort of system. And so I don't know, I'm excited. I think when I think about Ethereum specifically, this is specifically the use case that I think makes sense for, they always consider themselves as like the most credibly neutral, most expressive blockchain. And having more nation states adopt Ethereum as kind of that base layer, I think is going to be crucial. Yeah, I'm curious, like Simon, any strong reactions on the ID system, Ethereum as like the choice? Curious to hear more.
Yeah, I mean, Ethereum being the choice is extremely bullish for Ethereum. I guess like first mover advantage, right? Like I think they're just going to reap those benefits from being the first multi-purpose chain. And it looks like it doesn't matter who comes afterwards. Governments and big financial institutions and these sorts of players will choose Ethereum over newer, probably faster chains. So Ethereum maxes. That's a good day for them. I mean, being the first decentralized ID system, I think that's actually pretty cool. The idea that now every citizen in Bhutan can hold and self-custody their ID, and nobody can take it away from them, which I guess that's how it's going to be built. I'm not sure necessarily how Bhutan will execute smart contracts or like how the infrastructure will look like, but it's a possibility. And it's also interesting because of the fact that there's a bunch of private decentralized ID projects that have failed in the past. But now, governments themselves are going to do this and are going to, hire their own engineers to build their own decentralized ID systems. So it's almost like it looks like it's possibly going to be a mix of using Ethereum, but it's also going to be sort of centralized. It's going to be interesting how that develops. I don't know if you have details, Joker, on the way that it'll be launched, or you, Kush. Will this be able, will citizens in Bhutan have the possibility to self-custody their IDs? Will the government of Bhutan be able to, I guess, exert power over people's IDs and change the information on people's IDs if they wanted to unilaterally? I don't know. That it will be cool to know what's going to be the details here.
Yeah, I don't have additional details on that, but Simon, I'd like to know, you in your time at Alliance, have you seen projects succeed or even fail at trying to launch something related to decentralized IDs? I know that it was a clear trend in the past, and I haven't seen projects attempt it currently. I don't know if you have any insights on that.
Honestly, a lot of the projects that tried it in the past were infra projects, a lot of B2B.
Yeah.
So they were trying to simplify like all of the APIs and infrastructure for other people to build decentralized IDs on top. There was a bunch of Polkadot parachains trying to do this back in the day. And there was a bunch of them in Ethereum as well. But I haven't seen it in a while, by the way. It's like an old meta. And I think people just got tired of trying. So yeah, at Alliance, we actually never funded this type of projects.
I mean, this is like public good, right? Although, you could make the argument like B2G is actually a massive transaction, but, hard to scale it. I know Savra is an interesting national ID system that merged recently with CityOS. So their national ID, I think they work very closely with EF2. Interestingly, though, Bhutan is the 5th largest holder of Bitcoin by nation state. So they own 11,000 Bitcoins, only behind the US, China, the UK, and the Ukraine. So, and all mined with hydroelectric power. So interesting, to
That's
see
crazy.
Bhutan mining Bitcoin for like a decade now. Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy that it's all mined with Geo.
Exactly.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
And actually, I just looked it up. Like, it's about 25%. The amount of Bitcoin that they have represents about 25% of their GDP, annual GDP. So yeah, these guys are definitely at the forefront of innovation, of thinking differently, being non-consensus. I heard that they're also building a city for entrepreneurs to go there that is going to be like fully like sustainable, and at least from the renders, it looks fucking amazing, to be quite honest. So yeah, it's like, okay, cool. We have another country that might be a good option to go to live in, right? Like El Salvador, Bhutan, New Zealand.
That's it.
Yeah, there's a handful. Yeah.
Love it.
But talking about Bitcoin, I think just also to wrap it up, I think it's also important always to mention what's happening in the macro state. We saw that China, Trump's tariffs on China that are going to start on November 1st, 100% tariffs. We don't know if it's going to happen. It created a little bit of a backlash in the market, and Bitcoin dropped to like 105. It recovered. And it's funny how these macro news affect retail, and how institutionals are taking advantage of it. You can see all the liquidations happening, all the people we had longs and shorts. I think it was 19 billion, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, 19, almost 20. It was the largest liquidation day ever.
Largest liquidation day ever, because
Yeah.
of just some news. But the reality is that Bitcoin doesn't give a fuck. These are all short-term moves. And I think there's a bunch of people taking advantage of it. Some people say that there's insider trading. I don't know. But for me, I go back to the basics, and I've seen that Citigroup is going to offer self-custody, crypto custody services. Bank of America will offer crypto to their clients, and this is just the first year of the first pro crypto administration in the United States. And these things take time. For banks to offer these things take time. For Wall Street to change their mindset, it will take time. But there's going to be at least 3 more years of pro crypto administration, and I think people just forget about this simple fact, right? And there's a lot of thought in Twitter about we're at the top, and this is it, and we're going down. And I honestly, if I had to put a bet right now, I think these are just small movements generated by news, but I think we're going to see the next 3 years a slow increase in price, consistent.
Yeah, I'm in that same camp. We've seen gold right now is hitting new all-time highs every day. I think today it was at 4,300. And to me, the most logical option is that Bitcoin is going to follow that road. What you said is that we're in year 1 of the 4 years of Trump's term. And I think, I don't know if it was today or yesterday, that Eric Trump said that the Trump family has already made $1 billion in their cryptocurrency investments. And well, I see that trend continuing. If it's 1 billion in 1 year, well, I think they want to make more money for the next 3 years.
Agree. And also, with the slowing down of the economy in general in the United States, it looks like our friend Jerome Powell will do a little bit more interest rate cuts this year. And I wouldn't be surprised we're going to see some quantitative easing next year. It's going to depend on what type of quantitative easing will be done, because there's many ways to do it. But if we see an increase in broad money again, buckle up, because we're gonna go higher. I don't know what you see, Kush. What do you think about all of this?
Yeah, no, I think that we're definitely. I agree with everything you guys say. I wonder and worry about black swan events, to be honest. I think we're living in like a geopolitically very unstable world as well. So that's like, yes, economically things are going well, and certainly it's like green fields ahead, but we also have these like events that are one statement away that could send everything tumbling down, whether that is US and China with regards to Taiwan, Russia, Ukraine, although that conflict hopefully is ending, and Trump seems like he's really sort of advocating for global sort of peace. I think the Middle East situation hopefully will resolve itself quite soon. So it's like economically things are going very well, but that's for me when I'm most cautious. And when I start to think like, what's something has to break at some point, right? And whatever that ends up being, I think it'll be quite a strong catalyst for likely catastrophe. So cautious optimism is perhaps how I'd label it.
Yeah, of course. And I think we're in a good point to wrap up the episode. And thank you, Kush and Simon, for being here. And thank you, everyone, for listening to us. And we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Peace. Ciao.
Bye.